welcome to Edison Open House Global Healthcare 2021. In this session, RedHill, a specialty company focused on gastrointestinal conditions and infectious disease. With me is their Chief Business Officer, Guy Goldberg. Guy, hello.
Hello.
Tell me a bit about RedHill, the company.
Yes, thanks very much for having us on your program. So RedHill is a Nasdaq-listed company. We're fast-growing, revenue-generating, and as you said, focused on GI and also infectious disease. These are two very important indications that have received a lot of attention from investors recently. On the commercial side of things, we're very advanced for a company of our size. We have three commercial FDA-approved products that are addressing very important areas of unmet medical need. And on the R&D side, we also have several late-stage programs. We have a very strong track record of success. Our late-stage assets include opaganib for COVID-19 infections. We recently announced phase 2 data that we're very excited about, and we're in the middle of a phase 2/3 study right now. And in addition, we also have a drug for NTM infections. NTM is non-tuberculous mycobacteria. This is a very serious lung infection that currently has no first-line approved drug by FDA. We could be that first-line product, so we're very excited about it. It's difficult to diagnose. It's a relatively new indication, not a disease that people were aware of until recently when the diagnostic technologies improved and allowed physicians to be able to diagnose it. And therefore, the therapeutic treatment of it has also lagged, and we're right at the forefront. So we have a very robust pipeline and a very active and robust commercial portfolio, and are excited for 2021 and what it might bring for the company.
Let's focus a bit on each of those areas in turn. Let's go for NTM first, because you've recently had some results of some studies out, and you described it very well. It's a disease that nobody really understands or knows about, but for sure is probably there in a much greater prevalence than people are aware of at the moment. So tell me about your trial.
Yes, thank you. So it's a study. It's a very important study in that it's been given clearance by FDA to be a phase 3 study and given clearance for a go-ahead, and we have started the study. The study is focused on patients who have NDM disease, specifically MAC, which is one of basically the major infection relating to NTM. And we're going to be following the patients and looking at two important endpoints. One of them is clinical study endpoints, and the other is sputum culture conversion, which is a very important way to measure the disease and whether the bacteria is still in the lung. So these are two important endpoints that we measure, and we're off to the races with it. It's a very important study, as I mentioned, because if we're approved, we could potentially be the first-line product approved by FDA. And that would certainly make a huge difference for the over 100,000 and probably more, as you point out, patients in the United States that have to be treated and deal with this disease every year. So a very important indication, a very important potential product for this indication. We believe we could have the best drug out there to treat this disease.
Now, how's recruitment to the study going to be affected by COVID? Because of course, NTM often occurs in people who have existing lung conditions. Those are the people who are, hiding away at the moment, pretty reluctant to come to hospitals if they can possibly help it.
Yes, it's a very good question. In fact, we were scheduled to start the study a quarter before we started it, one full quarter, and we pushed it off a little. And the reason is it's not just with the patients. Pulmonologists are
otherwise occupied.
Yeah, it's a very careful. My mom's husband is a pulmonologist, and I hear stories from him all the time in Houston. It's an area where people are very cautious. You have to be very cautious, especially if someone is showing up to your clinic with advanced pulmonary condition of uncertain origin. So people are rightfully very nervous. And as a result, we've postponed the study for a quarter. We believe we're at the place right now where we can start the study, and we've taken all the precautions that need to be taken, both to protect the staff that would oversee the study, to protect physicians, to protect patients. We're doing all the right things to the highest standards to make sure that you can conduct this study under the right conditions. And the situation with COVID is in flux. So right now we're we're green light, full go in terms of getting this study underway. But of course, we are very cautious and very sensitive to putting safety first, and that's something we'll always keep an eye on. But we're working with the best clinical team out there, and we think we can do this study under these conditions and do it safely and under the right GCP conditions to make sure that the data integrity is preserved as well.
If everything goes according to plan, what's the timetable?
A very, very good question. So first, I would preface the answer by saying it really depends on recruitment, and we have to get enough of a track record of recruitment for us to be able to predict that, predict the answer to the question with any degree of certainty. So I can throw out rough estimates, but please keep in mind this is not any sort of official guidance, and a lot of the refinement of these timelines will have to happen once we get a pace of recruitment underway and we see how that's coming in. Many times the companies start studies and you expect a certain pace of recruitment. It can go faster, it can go slower. But many times it's very hard to predict how the patient flow will come in and will trickle in given the different conditions you might put on recruitment and the availability of the other factors that are out there. So it's a tricky one, but you can assume, let's say if it takes a year for recruitment and then another year or so for the study to go on, you're talking about 2 years, 2.5 years to get some sort of results. But again, that's a very back of the envelope. It's not even back of the envelope. It's just a general estimate based on what similar studies might do. Any precise estimate relative to our study would have to occur again after we get some recruitment under our belt and we have some confidence to give sort of exact estimates.
Meanwhile, let's go to COVID. In your other hat, as it were, of infectious disease specialists, because obviously, this is the mother and father of all infectious diseases.
Yeah.
What have you been doing with COVID, and where are you with the assets that you've developed?
Thank you very much for the question. So we're actually at the forefront of developments for therapeutics. We've seen a lot of success out there on the vaccine side. Unfortunately, there's been very little success for any company out there on the therapeutic side, and that goes for including some of the big names that many of your listeners would be familiar with. When you look at the data and you look at the recommendations of the WHO and other similar bodies who are looking at the data that's generating, there really isn't anything that's making a big difference for patients, if at all. So our drug really is at the forefront. Where we are is we've recently announced right at the end of the year phase 2 data where we showed some very nice signals of efficacy. We also showed safety for opaganib, which is our leading product for COVID. This was in a patient population that had a serious COVID infection. They were hospitalized and they required oxygen support. We were very excited about that data. In parallel, we're conducting a phase 2/3 study that we're significantly underway in terms of recruitment. That's a global study, and we believe that study will be enough to submit emergency use authorization application. So we're very excited about this study and where we are. A little bit about the drug. It has some very unique advantages to it. Number one, it has a dual mechanism of action. So it works both as an antiviral and also anti-inflammatory effect. And that really sets it apart from almost all the drugs out there that are out there for developments. We work both on the cause and the effect of COVID. So that's very important. Number two, it's an oral pill. You see in the United States that even with these monoclonal antibodies that are being distributed, hospitals, physicians, they're having a big challenge in terms of the administration of these drugs to patient bases. By being an oral pill, we have a unique advantage of that. Number three is that it can overcome the potential challenges of mutations with the virus. That's obviously something that everybody's concerned about with the UK mutation and the South African mutation, these other mutations we're hearing about. Our product works on the host, and therefore we believe it can cast a much wider net in terms of being able to positively affect the outcome of COVID-infected patients. We can work on potentially be effective on many variations. In fact, we've seen some very exciting preclinical data on other viruses that are similar but not exactly the same as COVID. So we think our net could be very wide, and there could be a huge advantage there. So we have many potential unique advantages. Very exciting phase 2 data, backed up, by the way, from compassionate use data in COVID patients, and also some preclinical data which showed that we're able to completely inhibit COVID viral replication. So all of this together is painting a very nice picture of a product that could be one of the leading treatments for COVID-19. And now we're just waiting for this phase 2/3 data to come out.
And what's the timetable for that? When do you expect that data to arrive?
Sure, an important question. So right now, under the current design of our study, we've enrolled almost 70% of our patients, and the data could come out this quarter. We are considering, one of the things that's happening in COVID treatments is that it's a very fast evolving field, and the way that physicians treat seriously infected COVID patients who are hospitalized, the medical standards are changing. So studies have to sort of keep up with those standards, because that affects how you design and how you define success with your clinical study. So one of the things we're doing is considering changing the primary endpoint of that study. And if we do that, then it will take a little bit longer, because we'll have a bigger patient base for that study. So the earliest it will be is this quarter. It may be pushed out a little bit if we change that primary endpoint, but we're talking here about months. It's a very short time frame to get a significant results for our study, which we're very excited about.
And what kind of numbers of patients are you talking about? Of course, no problems with recruitment here, unfortunately.
Yeah, so right now, the way it's designed right now, it's 270 patients. We might increase that to 400, 450 patients. That's generally the numbers that we're considering as we look to make this change. But the 270, we've recruited over around 70%, close to 70%. So that gives you a rough sense of how many patients we've already recruited. Unfortunately, as you say, many patients out there, not just in the United States, but also in Europe, Russia, and many of the other countries where we're recruiting the study.
And would you consider, given what we've seen typically with COVID treatments, is that there's a promising indication in a relatively small number of patients, and then that disappears when you test it with a large number of patients. So might you consider joining one of the randomized trials, or putting your asset in for one of those randomized trials like Recovery or Solidarity, which involves tens of thousands of patients?
We've looked at that, and we're always happy to have our drug be involved in all sorts of clinical studies to better understand it and how it can be effective. We are very excited about our current study, because we think even as a standalone therapy, it could have a huge advantage because of that dual mechanism of action, both working on the cause and the effect. And to distinguish that, many of the monoclonal antibodies out there are either anti-inflammatory or they're antiviral. So, in the case of COVID, because both of those factors play such a significant role in the outcome of the disease, just doing one and not just affecting one or not the other really is a limited approach to treating, which might explain some of the mixed results we've seen. We believe that by treating both the cause and the effect, we will see potentially very significant results from our product as itself. And when I mean as itself, the drug is administered on top of standard of care, whatever that might be. But that's the way you have to run these studies, because the patients are hospitalized and severe patients. And we're looking to do that, but we think that even on top of, as a standalone, on top of existing therapy, we will have significant results, and that will be very meaningful clinically.
Thank you for that, Guy. I want to turn now to the other part of your business. I guess it's the foundation of your business, the GI conditions that you develop assets for. Tell me how that part of your business is working.
Sure. So in the commercial side, so we have a full R&D pipeline of GI products that we've advanced and we've had successful clinical results for RHB 104 for Crohn's and also Beckinda for gastroenteritis and IBS-D. On the commercial side, which I think what you're asking about is a big focus for ours. We have 3 FDA-approved products in GI. The first one is Movantik. This is a product for opioid-induced constipation that we acquired from AstraZeneca. AstraZeneca launched this product in 2015, spent a big amount of time and resources to make it the #1 drug of its class for OIC, really establishes a nice product. And we were able to acquire that product from AstraZeneca and build on the efforts that they've done and now make it a RedHill product and grow the product beyond that. So that's the first one. The second product is Talicia. This is a product we developed in-house. It's for H. pylori infection. This is an indication that's been pretty much neglected by the pharma world, unjustifiably, because it's an area of huge unmet medical need. H. pylori infection has been identified both by the WHO and FDA as a top priority pathogen for developing new drugs because of the problem of resistance to the current standard of care. We have what we think is the new gold standard out there, and we're launching that product right now on our own with our commercial team. And then the third product is Amcolo for traveler's diarrhea. This is a product we acquired from Cosmo, a leading European GI company that I'm sure many of your followers are familiar with. They entrusted us with this product to be the US home for it. And well, traveling has stopped, so traveler's diarrhea has obviously been not a significant indication in last year, but this year with travel, we expect travel to return, and we think this will be a significant product. So we have 3 important products. We have a commercial team based in Raleigh, North Carolina, 100 sales reps, and a very experienced commercial team that's helping lead the effort. So we are very excited about our commercial team and what we could potentially do with these products.
And of course, the significance of eradicating Helicobacter pylori is that it's the organism that is thought to contribute substantially to both stomach cancer and gastric ulcers. So it's a really important preventative measure.
Yes, absolutely. It's classified by the WHO as a carcinogen on par with asbestos and smoking. So if you get, unfortunately, gastric cancer, it's almost certainly that you have it because you have an H. pylori infection. It's a very bad bacteria. It needs to be eradicated when it's diagnosed. And that's the reason why this is potentially a very large market. We estimate 2 million, maybe even as much as 3 million Americans get treated for it every year. Big market, big problem with resistance, and a significant health issue, as you mentioned, because of the issue of the link with gastric cancer and peptic ulcer disease, as well as other problems that H. pylori causes.
And also significantly underdiagnosed, as your NTM product is.
Absolutely.
So from the investor's point of view, what milestones should investors look out for? You've mentioned some of them over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yes, so a few key ones to pay attention. #1, our commercial operations. We're seeing fast-growing scripts for Talicia. We're seeing growth in Movantik, and we expect Amcolo to start growing in this year. So 3 products that we hope will contribute significantly to our commercial operations and for the company and bring us to profitability sometime this year. So investors should follow our earnings call every quarter to get our updates. We try to give a lot of transparency on those calls regarding what we're seeing, from everything from scripts to managed care and how COVID is affecting everything. So those are very important earnings call to track, and of course they happen every quarter. #2 is Opaganib. We're in the middle of a very important phase 2/3 study. Readout will be happening in the coming months. And that's, as I mentioned, could be very significant. We know that some of the drugs that already have received emergency use authorization are selling for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, just simply because there's so many patients out there and very few treatment options. So this could be a very meaningful product for us if we're successful. So the Opaganib readouts, and also, by the way, Opamistat. This is our second product for COVID-19. We're also starting a clinical study for that with that product that is in the more milder COVID population, and also a very important drug. So that's another milestone that investors should follow. And then the last one that I would keep in mind is NTM. As I mentioned, we're starting that clinical study, and we'll be having updates over the course of the next 6 months regarding how that study is going, because we could potentially be the first product to market as first-line treatment. Following our progress with that drug is very important, and I encourage investors to do so.
Guy, 2020 was an extraordinarily difficult year for all of us. How is RedHill looking forward at 2021?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So 2020, as you mentioned, has certainly been challenging, not just for RedHill, but for everybody. On the other hand, it's also given us as a company an opportunity, and that is to make a difference with this terrible pandemic. We were fortunate to have opaganib, which is probably the right drug at the right time to make a difference. It's backed by extensive preclinical data and safety data, so we've been comfortable to take it directly into late-stage clinical studies, which we've done, and generated some very promising data right at the end of 2020. So the best way that we think we could end 2020 is on positive, promising phase 2 data, and hopefully that will lead into successful phase 2/3 data in 2021, and opaganib will be an important product for helping patients with this terrible disease.
Guy Goldberg, thank you so much.
Thank you.